So you're moving to Portland, Oregon. Well, what are you gonna do when you get here? In this video, we're going to talk about some of the most fun things to do living in Portland, Oregon, and all that starts now.
Hey everyone, Seth Marchant and Paul Klim here with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from beautiful downtown Portland today. If you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, we show you what it's like to live in Oregon. In this case, we're going to show you what some of the best things, the most fun things to do around Portland are. So if you want to see more videos like this about living in Oregon and living around Portland, hit the subscribe button, tap the bell, make sure you get notified. We do these videos about twice a week. And as realtors, we always love helping people that are thinking about moving to the area. So if that's you, you can give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or you can click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom. That's typically best for people that are coming from out of state. All right, now let's get right into it.
All right, so you're moving to Portland, Oregon. You're wondering, what are some of the best things to do? What are some of the most fun things to do with your time? You've probably done some research, and we're gonna try to elaborate on some of the most common things that people do, day to day, as far as, what they get into, what they do on the weekends, and try to give you an insider's perspective on maybe some of the, the secrets that either the locals don't want you to know, or some of the best hidden gems for each category that we talk about. So what do we got first?
Well, one of the biggest attractions for people coming from out of the area that are visiting the area, as well as people that live in this area, is the Oregon Zoo. And right there with the Oregon Zoo, you have this massive park, Washington Park. You also have the Japanese gardens, and you have the Portland Rose Gardens, which Portland is known for. So you've got this entire area with quite a few different things to do. In fact, it would take you really a couple of full days to get through that entire area
at
with
least
all there is to do in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Forest Park being the biggest inner city park in the country, there's miles and miles of trails. There's trails that you can walk on. There's trails that are a little more aggressive as far as the elevation. There's gravel trails. There's not a ton of paved trails up there though. And, once you get up into the park, it really does feel like you are kind of out in the wilderness, but you are literally, less than a mile from the city center. So it's pretty incredible. Another thing is Washington Park, where you have the Portland Rose Garden and the Japanese Garden, and there's some tennis courts. But there are some flat grass areas that are really great for just spending an afternoon, having a picnic. And a lot of people don't necessarily know that that's a place where they can go and really kind of have their private space. It's so big.
Yeah.
It's even when there's a lot of people there, you can find your own little area to kind of lay out a blanket, hang out, have lunch, whatever you want to do. Another great part about Washington Park in this area is the Hoyt Arboretum, where I think there's like over 100 different species of trees from all over the world. They're all marked, so you can read about what types of trees they are, and there's some really cool ones in there. I think they got like a monkey puzzle. There's a redwood section with a big overlook deck. That's really cool.
The thing about that area is they've really kind of got something for everybody. So if you've got kids, there's plenty of things for the kids to do. If you don't have kids, old people, young people, there's really kind of something that appeals to everybody. So that's why it's kind of one of the biggest draws. And to maybe give you a feel of the area, Central Park in New York, which is obviously a massive park, is under 1,000. I think it's closer to 800. So to give you some perspective of how big that area is and how big Forest Park is, compared to Central Park in New York, it's massive. So fun for everyone, great for people that already live here, as well as people that are, coming here and traveling here, whether you're moving here or you're just visiting the area.
All right, so we talked about some of the kind of inner city wilderness and hiking that you can do, which like Seth said, really offers something for everybody. But just east of Portland, you have the Columbia River Gorge, which is a beautiful historic highway that goes out the Columbia River. And I think, you get about 20-25 minutes out on the highway and you get into the gorge, and from there are dozens and dozens of hikes and trails and waterfalls and all sorts of things that you can do, as far as hiking and just getting outdoors.
Yeah, people come from all over the world to visit the Columbia River Gorge, mostly known for Multnomah Falls. So if you look up the Columbia River Gorge, that's probably the first thing that you're going to see is Multnomah Falls, but there's tons of waterfalls. In fact, if you've never seen Multnomah Falls, definitely go check it out. But that's going to be, you know, one of the bigger tourist traps, as well as people that live here. Again, there's people that live here that visit Multnomah Falls as well. So it's pretty busy. There are a handful of other waterfalls that are just actually right next door, and a lot of waterfalls all up and down the gorge. So there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot of different hikes, from easy to moderate to there are some very difficult hikes. Probably one of the more popular ones, one of the bigger ones would be Mount Defiance. It's the highest spot in the gorge. Yep. That's about a 5,000 foot elevation climb. You start at sea level at the very bottom, and then it's 5,000 feet to the very top. You got a great view of St. Helens, of Mount Hood, of course, and all in all, it would take you weeks to do all the various different hikes up and down the Columbia River Gorge. So that's a huge attraction for people. One thing I would say too, check before you go. Some places require parking permits, which you can buy in advance, and some places require permits to actually hike these trails these days too, so which is kind of a newer thing. So anywhere you go, make sure and check before you go, but definitely check out the Columbia River Gorge if you're here, or if you're moving here, that's something that you're probably going to want to do.
Yeah, the gorge is incredible. A lot of great hiking. You can get all the way out to Hood River, which is a little town about 50 miles east of Portland that has some of the best breweries, wineries, restaurants in the state of Oregon. It's a really great attraction. It's a great
for windsurfing.
Yeah, I think it's a windsurfing and maybe / kiteboarding capital of the world. So. Yeah, I mean, you know, for kind of outdoor sports activities and, you know, getting into some of those things, Hood River's a really great spot. And again, that's just about 50 miles east of Portland, out Highway 84, and you drive the whole Columbia River Gorge to get out that way. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. All right, next on the list is go check out the breweries. And you know, Portland is probably the most famous beer city in the country, so this is relatively self-explanatory, but I think it's hard to understand really kind of the breadth of what's offered until you get here. And especially kind of within city limits, you know, you literally will have breweries on every other block in some neighborhoods. So areas of Southeast Portland and Northeast Portland and Northwest Portland, there are a ton of breweries. Some of the most popular and oldest breweries have multiple locations, you know, that are kind of different. It doesn't really feel like a chain, you know, as far as kind of the atmosphere and environment. You know, every brewery is going to be, you know, unique as far as what's offered, but you know, kind of the common denominator with these breweries is just, you know, fantastic world-class beer. Now the food, on the other hand, really does range. I think you have some breweries that are, you know, very kind of culinary forward and food forward as far as what they offer, and then you have a lot of breweries that just have you know, onion rings and chicken strips and burgers and yeah, bar food. You know, you're gonna get a basket of fries and you know, probably not feel too great afterward. But either way, you know, the brewery scene in Portland is incredible. There's new breweries popping up all the time. And something we'll talk about later in this video, you have the Oregon Brewers Fest here on the waterfront, where we are today, which is the largest beer festival in the country, and it might be second in the world next to Oktoberfest. Yeah. So definitely something worth checking out.
Yeah, and so for these kind of brew tours or any sort of like food tour that you might do, you can plan this yourself and Uber around or whatever you want to do, or there are a lot of tour companies that will drive you around, or if you've ever seen any of those pedal bikes where you've got like 4 people or 6 people on them pedaling around, there's a lot of different options, whether you want to kind of plan your own tour or have somebody kind of tour you around the city. That's really popular here because that's, you know, like Paul was saying, that's a big draw. All right, so next on the list, very popular thing to do is taking a day trip to the Oregon coast. From downtown Portland, you can get to the Oregon coast in about an hour and a half. So it's definitely maybe a little bit better than that, you know, without traffic. So it's definitely a thing that a lot of people will do just for a day trip. The Oregon coast is one of the most beautiful places, kind of like the Gorge, in the world. And there's a lot of different great towns to tour and go up and down the Oregon coast, from Astoria to Seaside to Cannon Beach down to Manzanita. You might go down more towards the Central Coast, Florence, Newport. Those are going to be more maybe like a couple hours, but still within the reach of a day trip. And so there's so many different places that you can go on the Oregon coast, so many different things to see, that it's a great little trip for people, you know, on a Saturday or Sunday, or just whatever day you can go to make from Portland.
Yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things about the Oregon coast, in particular, kind of the mid-central up to the northern region of the coast, is how accessible it is to the majority of people in Oregon. So, you know, from Portland down to Salem, down to Eugene, you know, this is where the majority of the population in Oregon live, and regardless of which town you're in, you can get to several different towns within 90 minutes up to 2 hours. And you know, there's bigger towns, there's smaller towns, there's more touristy towns, there's areas that have, you know, more activities to offer as far as hiking, things like that. But you know, one thing that's constant is you're gonna get phenomenal beaches, you know, up and down this area of the Oregon coast. And you know, it's really popular for people to, you know, pack up in the morning, get in the car, go spend the afternoon on the beach, maybe grab lunch. There's a lot of great breweries out there too, so you know, that's a big thing on the Oregon coast. And then head home. And it's just so easy and accessible from, again, you know, all of the Portland metro area and beyond.
All right, what do we have next? How about the Willamette Valley wine country? And you may have kind of noticed the theme kind of at this point. We're not necessarily just showing you all the typical stuff that there is to do in Portland, you know, whether it's some sort of thing like a Top Golf, or you know, Dave and Buster's, where you have, or a place where you have bowling and games and stuff like that. Portland has all that stuff, just like any other city. But we're showing you some things that are within at least a day trip to Portland that you might not know about. And the Willamette Valley wine country, sort of like the Gorge, sort of like the coast, is a place that people literally travel regionally or nationally to actually come and visit. Now, not exactly the same as California wine country, but in a lot of ways it's just as good. And if you're somebody that's thinking like, well, I don't really drink wine, I don't do wine tasting, I can tell you that it's a fun experience for pretty much anybody, even if you don't really drink wine. A lot of these wineries will have games, things to do like cornhole, ladder golf. You know, they kind of make it fun for anybody that wants to come. There's also other places that you can find around there too, where you can maybe just grab a beer or just whatever kind of drink if you don't really drink wine. But it's a kind of fun activity that a lot of Portlanders tend to do, because you can get to wine country in about an hour or less. There's actually a lot of great vineyards that are in the Portland metropolitan area. Some people in the Portland metro area, you know, live within walking distance of some of these wineries, but actual wine country, Willamette Valley, about an hour away, tons of stuff to do. It's a great way to spend a day, just kind of hang out with friends and family too. There's a lot of family friendly places. You know, if you want to take the kids, there's a lot of places that have things for the kids to do too. So that's a really popular one, not just for people that are visiting the area, but for people that actually live in this area. Yeah,
so the Willamette Valley kind of wine region has 10 different American viticultural areas. I think that's viticulture areas, which is what they're called. So there's actually 10 different designated areas just in the Willamette Valley that are their own separate wine regions. And a handful of these are really kind of touching or kind of bleeding into the Portland metro area, you know, into that urban growth boundary. So there's like, you know, the Chehalem Mountains area, or there's the Tualatin Hills, I believe it's called, AVA, which has a ton of wineries. And if you're on the west side of Portland, you know, you can get to some of these places in 15 minutes. And like Seth said, you know, a lot of these wineries are very family friendly. It's beautiful country. It's very scenic. So, you know, if wine isn't your favorite thing, it's still a great place to spend a day, spend an afternoon, and something that's really popular for people to do in the area.
Good food out there too. If you're not big into wine and you just want to grab a bite to eat, maybe grab a beer or something like that too, definitely go to the Red Hills Market. It's probably one of like the locals' kind of favorite places to go eat when they visit Willamette Valley. So it's a thing where just about anybody can actually have some fun, again, even if you're not a wine drinker. All right, next on the list,
Mount Hood.
Mount Hood is one of the most popular mountains in the country. I believe it's the most commonly climbed mountain. I mean, more people climb Mount Hood than anywhere else Obviously got skiing and snowboarding. There are other kind of activities too, hiking, and then there's a lot of great places to visit on Mount Hood, especially the lodge. If you want to go check out Timberline Lodge, great place to just go kind of see some stuff, see some people watch, and grab some food. The lodge is huge. It's kind of, is it a historic place?
Yeah, so actually Timberline Lodge was a part of the New Deal. So back in the 30s, there was a bunch of federal money getting poured into public projects, roads, highways, infrastructure. Timberline Lodge was a part of that. So, it's on the National Historic Registry, really cool old lodge. It's actually, if you've seen the movie The Shining, all of the exterior footage of that lodge where they're staying is actually Timberline Lodge. So if you've ever seen that movie, that's what it is. And I mean, it's incredible. It's a great place to spend some time, whether you're into snowboarding or skiing or not. And even if you'd like to get out in the snow, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do up on Mount Hood. There's the alpine slides. You can do inner tubes. It doesn't have to be too extreme. Obviously, the kids love that stuff. And there's some great food and drinks, up in that area of Government Camp as well. Like Mount Hood Brewing is there, for example. There's some other restaurants. And then, of course, you continue up into Timberline Lodge.
Yeah, that's just about an hour if you really hustle with no traffic, maybe up to an hour and a half. During skiing and snowboarding season, it definitely, there's a time where it can get congested and it can be quite a bit of traffic, but typically, like just on a spring day like this, you're looking at about like hour and 15, hour and a half to get to the mountains. So well within a reach, the reach of a day trip. And lots of times, we're just going up here. We don't get a ton of snow in Portland, just going up there to see some snow, see some stuff, grab a bite to eat. Great for a day trip. We're very fortunate to be able to have so many places that are within like an hour, hour and a half reach, and Mount Hood is definitely one of those.
Yeah, you've probably seen a common theme so far as the things that people typically do with their time and the activities that people engage in, and some of the most fun things to do in the Portland area, aren't necessarily right here. You have this hour, hour and a half, 2 hour radius of areas that you can drive to, where you can be at the beach, be at the mountain, be in the valley, into wine country with beautiful rolling hills. So there's so many different landscapes and so many different things to do, with your time. But here right in Portland, there's also, of course, a lot of things to do. We talked about the breweries, we talked about the zoo, Washington Park, Forest Park, and a lot of other parks around the city as well that, aren't just, 1 or 2 city blocks. I mean, these are big parks with a lot of things to explore. But here in Portland, in particular, downtown Portland, you have Waterfront Park, where pretty much from spring around Memorial Day and throughout the summer, there's going to be festivals and events going on all the time. Right now, they're just wrapping up the Portland Rose Festival. Yeah,
if you're wondering, if the people are kind of wondering what's going on, kind of what's in the background, what's all that fencing?
Yeah. So they're wrapping up the Rose Festival, and they do a couple different parades. It lasts about 3 weeks. Here down on Waterfront Park, they have what's called the City Fair, where they have concerts and live music, and they have rides and games, and it's really kind of like a county fair, or what you would envision, with carousels and different games and activities and things like that. But it's right here on Waterfront Park. And then moving throughout the summer, you have the Pride Festival, which is in June. You have the Blues Festival, which is always the 4th of July weekend. And that draws some pretty big names, some pretty big acts. If you're into blues or just like to see live music at all, the Blues Festival is a great event. There's the Bite of Oregon. And of course, there's the Oregon Brewers Festival, which we talked about, which actually, I think, draws the most people to the city of Portland than any other event as far as tourism.
More than the Rose Festival?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So people travel to come to the Oregon Brewers Festival from all around the country and all around the world. And again, I think it's the biggest one in the country, if not the world. And there's, I think, at least a couple hundred breweries that set up with several tents, and you get these little tokens, and you can get like a full glass, or you can get a taster, and it's really fun. It's a ton of fun. So throughout the whole summer, there's a ton of events. and activities right here downtown in Waterfront Park.
Yeah, I think another thing to point out too is that if you like those type of things, but maybe you don't live downtown or you don't tend to get out too much, and you're kind of maybe a little bit more of a homebody, or you like to stay closer to home, a lot of those things that Paul just mentioned, you can find actually throughout smaller towns in the Portland metropolitan area. So places like Beaverton, Hillsborough, Lake Oswego, Wilsonville, all these little towns that are in the Portland metropolitan area that are 20-30 minutes outside of Portland also tend to have things that have music in the summertime. There's movies in the park, a lot of things that revolve around food and drinks. So you can actually find that in a lot of places throughout the Portland metropolitan area, so not just downtown too.
Yeah, farmers markets too, which are a little bit seasonal, obviously. You know, in the winter months you're not going to get, you know, much in the way of, you know, these types of activities, but there's a ton of farmers markets. You know, pretty much every suburb around Portland has one.
I went to ours yesterday.
Yeah, there you go.
Every town is suburb in Portland is usually different days. Some are Wednesdays, some are Thursdays, some are Saturdays too. So if you really like farmers markets, you can actually visit farmers markets. Usually not Sundays and Mondays as much, or Mondays and Tuesdays, but you've got like a solid 4 or 5 days out of the week that you could go visit farmers markets every week.
Yeah, I think there's several throughout kind of the, you know, Portland within the city limits. I think the most popular one is at Portland State University, which is right downtown. That seems to be, you know, the one that most people try to get to, and you know, seems to be the busiest, but kind of has the best offerings overall. So definitely one to check out. There's also a lot of races that happen downtown Portland too. So if you are, you know, into doing a 5K every once in a while, or you like running marathons or anything in between, there's like the Shamrock Run, which I think is the biggest one that Portland does. There's also the Portland Marathon.
Shamrock is like, we've done that together before with thousands of people.
Yeah.
5,000 people, 10,000. It's a lot of people. So. And you can do anywhere from a 5K to a half marathon in the Shamrock, right?
Yeah, I think there's even like shorter, like 2K walks. You know, there's all kinds of events that you could, you know, kind of participate in. So there's something for everybody at every level. But yeah, the route, if you're looking at more like the half marathon or the marathon, actually the Shamrock Run, they don't do a marathon, but there is a Portland Marathon that's always in October. But either way, the route kind of spans north and south through the city. So, you know,
we'll have to try and get in the Portland Marathon one of these days.
Yeah, I'll start training now.
A little bit over my head, but one of these days aspire to that.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, as you were saying, the route goes all throughout the city, and they block off, shut down these streets all throughout the city. Yeah,
so you'll be running along the water at times. You'll be running kind of right downtown in between buildings at times, and then you'll kind of run up the hill, up Terwilliger, up to OHSU to the south.
Brutal.
Which is, yeah, that hill is it's no fun.
Yeah, that's one thing to point out about doing runs and marathons around here in Portland, is we've got the hills, so it's not exactly flat. So it's maybe, I don't know, I've never done a half marathon or any sort of run in any other city, but might be a little bit tougher here in Portland with all the hills you got to conquer.
Yeah, so, you know, we love our warmer months, you know, because of the way the weather is here. And so, you know, the city and the surrounding areas definitely take advantage of it as far as putting on these events. People love to do it. It's a lot of fun. So next on the list, Portland has a ton of museums. And, you know, if you're into history or a particular subject, there's going to be a lot to offer in the way of different museums that you can get into in the Portland area. There's the Portland Historical Society. There's OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, which is a ton of fun. It's a great place to take kids. You have the Portland Art Museum, the Children's Museum, the Forestry Center. The list goes on.
Yeah, OMSI actually just right across the river from us, right here. Great little place to just go for a few hours, or maybe even make a day trip out of it. So the museums, I haven't been to too many other museums outside of Portland, but I feel like we have a really good museum scene if you want to go check out that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and obviously admission isn't necessarily cheap. So some of these places do have memberships, which can be much more affordable. So you might pay $100 for the year or $200 for the year, versus paying $20, $22, $24.
Usually just takes going a couple times before a yearly membership pays for it. Same with the zoo. Yeah,
the zoo has a membership as well, which is great. And these places too, the reason why you would get a membership is because they have different exhibits and different things that they have on display, kind of rotating in and rotating through. So it's not like you're going to go once and then you've seen it. There's always going to be new stuff at these museums, and so they keep it interesting and kind of keep it fresh. So if you're looking at things to do indoors, especially in some of the cooler months, a lot of the different great museums in the Portland area are obviously a great thing to do. All right, so last on the list, and this is something that probably isn't going to be on a lot of people's radar, if you're moving to the area, but there's a boat called the Portland Spirit right there, actually, where you can do a dinner cruise. And this is something that's super fun. I mean, most everybody I know has at least done it one time.
Yeah.
There's also,
you haven't done it, have you?
I have not, actually.
I haven't done it either. And everything else Paul and I have mentioned are things that we kind of commonly do or have done as Oregonians living here our entire life. I've always wanted to do a dinner cruise on the Portland Spirit, but I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, and they do a lot of private events as well, so a lot of companies will hold parties on there. I know it's a super popular place for proms, which is kind of cool. Something you wouldn't necessarily think of as a prom venue. I think they do their own kind of like 80s nights and different themed parties and things like that you can get tickets for, but kind of their bread and butter is this dinner cruise where you go up and down the Willamette River, see all the city lights. I'm sure the food is at best or at least it's fine, but it's probably pretty good. And yeah, I mean, what better a way to get out and kind of see the city and the sights and the surroundings, than on a place like this going up and down the river.
Who doesn't like being on a boat? I mean, that's my thinking, right? So definitely gonna have to knock that one off the list of very few things that I actually haven't done or tried around the Portland metropolitan area.
So if you look at this list and you look at all the different things there are to do in Portland and in the surrounding areas, and even within a couple hours drive of Portland, and you're moving here, you're wondering how you're gonna spend your time, what you're gonna do, well, this list should keep you pretty busy. Each of these things that we mentioned, you could spend a ton of time, exploring, especially the hiking, in the different areas like the coast and Mount Hood and the Columbia River Gorge. You could spend years getting out and exploring different trails and different things to do and not see the entirety of it.
So if you're thinking about moving here, or maybe you already live here, I know some people that already live here will watch this video. We'd love to help you buy or sell a home. If you're coming from out of the area, like we mentioned at the beginning, usually starting with a Zoom with us is the best way to go. Other than that, you can give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email. If this video helped you, give us a thumbs up. That way we know we're doing a good job. And if you have any comments, any questions, if you want to share maybe some of the things that you do or would like to do when you come to Portland, put those in the comments below. We always respond.
All right, we appreciate you watching. We'll look forward to speaking with you soon.
Make sure and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Take care, everyone.
Take care.